Secretary of State Antony Blinken will meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv Wednesday as tensions between Russia and Ukraine escalate. Secretary Blinken will then travel to Berlin to meet with German, British and French officials about a response to possible Russian military action. On Friday, he will speak with his Russian counterpart in Switzerland. The meetings follow failed security talks with Moscow last week. Russia has an estimated 100,000 troops staged at Ukraine's border. U.S. officials have warned Russia is planning a false flag operation as a strategy to invade Ukraine. Russian officials have called the accusation, quote, total disinformation. Here's what Press Secretary Jen Psaki had to say about rising tensions.
As I noted a few minutes ago, we believe we're now at a stage where Russia could at any point launch an attack on Ukraine. I would say that's more stark than we have been.
For more, let's bring in CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis. Hi there, Olivia. I know you've been speaking with State Department officials. Tell us, first of all, what the significance is of such a high-level meeting here for Secretary Blinken, dispatching the Secretary of State to meet with Russia's foreign affairs minister.
Sure. Well, Elaine, as you noted, the Russians all but pronounced diplomacy dead after those talks last week. So this new meeting between the Secretary and Foreign Minister Lavrov suggests that there's at the very least still a heartbeat to these talks. As you noted, he's going first to Ukraine and to Germany for consultations with partners, and armed with that show of solidarity, is meeting Lavrov in Geneva. And while it's a hopeful sign that the Russians are still willing to engage in dialogue, are still coming to the table, are still showing up, as it were, there's still plenty of room for pessimism here because that central impasse appears to be far from resolved. The Russians have for weeks been demanding these security guarantees that NATO never enlarge eastward. The West and NATO have said consistently that those are non-starters. And so it's really hard to see how any sort of diplomatic breakthrough at any level results from this meeting on Friday. But we'll see. Diplomats routinely overcome really, really tall odds. The thing to take away, though, I think, is that clip that you just played from Jen Psaki. Russia has continued its buildup, showed no signs of de-escalation. And as both the State Department and the White House put it today, we're at a stage where Russia could launch an attack on Ukraine at any point.
And Olivia, the Russians have now sent troops and hardware into Belarus with which they'll be conducting joint military drills. Why are they doing this, and how have U.S. officials responded?
Sure. So Belarus has really now emerged as an acute area of concern, at least for the U.S. and for the West, because of the various ways in which it could play a role in Russia's plan to invade or its aggression towards Ukraine. Just this afternoon, senior State Department officials said that it could be stationing these troops, intended for joint drills, actually to potentially attack Ukraine from the north and even put Kyiv, the capital, in their sights. Russia, for its part, have said that the drills are to thwart and repel a foreign aggression. But the U.S. has said that there's been no notification of them taking place. And of course, the timing and their placement are highly suspect. And of course, Belarus has shown itself to be a willing partner to the Kremlin in recent months as of late. It manufactured that migrant crisis on the border with Poland. It forced a passenger off an EU flight. And now, of course, it's lending its territory to Russian military troops and hardware. One other thing that the senior State Department official raised today is that it may, in the future, also allow Putin to stage both conventional and nuclear weapons on its territory, putting them that much closer to European capitals, of course. None of that is certain, and the U.S. has not come out with any concrete evidence to support that suggestion. But in the words of that official today, when a leader like Lukashenko talks about nuclear weapons, we should all pay attention.
Well, Senator Chris Murphy said he does not believe Russian President Vladimir Putin has made up his mind on whether to invade Ukraine. What is he potentially basing that on, and what has Putin signaled about what may be factoring into his decision?
Sure. I mean, at the risk of trying to get into the mind of Senator Murphy, I think he's basing that at least on the assessment of the U.S. intelligence community, which has similarly said it has not yet assessed that Vladimir Putin has made that decision to go and invade Ukraine. But it's also in part because anyone, I think, would be loath to say with confidence what Vladimir Putin is thinking at any given moment. We know that the circle around him is vanishingly small, and really the only person who knows what decisions Vladimir Putin will make is Vladimir Putin. The most concerning about everything that he's done to date is that it's now really nearly impossible to tell what option from a sizable menu of options he's going to choose. Does he stick to hybrid measures and destabilize Ukraine with cyber attacks? Does he embark on a limited incursion of just the Donbass that has been subject to conflict in recent years and in the past? Is he now going to use Belarus as a front to actually threaten Kiev? Does he use those prepositioned operatives that you mentioned to foment violence and create a pretext for a ground invasion? Or does he surprise us all and respond to some of these diplomatic overtures and begin to de-escalate? Those are just a sampling of the menu of options that he's created for himself, and is very much what the eyes of the world really are looking for any hints as to what he's going to do next.
Well, where do the U.S. and NATO's interests meet in the midst of all of this? Where do they diverge also when it comes to Russia?
Sure. I mean, I think interestingly, one of the unintentional outcomes of this crisis, at least when it comes to Russia, is that it has really imbued NATO, which was for a time this sort of meandering and directionless alliance, with a new sense of purpose. There's nothing like having a common enemy, or at least a common adversary, to unify a front, right? The messaging has been really consistent from NATO, from the U.S. All 30 NATO member states are unanimous in backing this idea that only NATO is going to determine its future membership, and that any sovereign state is going to have the ability to chart their own course forward and strive to meet NATO criteria if that's a membership that they want to pursue. There may be privately some divergence in how realistic it actually is that Ukraine, or for that matter, Georgia, what the timeline looks like for their membership, or whether that's even, a plausible possibility. But publicly, the front has been united, and which has also been the case for this expressed desire for arriving at a political solution. Both the U.S. and NATO have said that they are striving for this political, diplomatic, negotiated solution rather than risking military confrontation, while saying that's also an eventuality that they're prepared for.
We'll wait to see what happens with Secretary Blinken's meetings this week. Olivia Gazis. Olivia, thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine.